All right. Hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is ACTO's monthly forum call, and welcome. I'm glad to see everybody's faces on this call. We have a special guest today who will be introduced in a moment, Peter Redding. I just wanted to let you know who we are, who I am. I am Hallie, and I'm on the board of ACTO this year, and I'm the chair of the Education Committee. So the Education Committee, we also have Anita here from the Education Committee. We're pleased to offer you these calls once a month. And ACTO is a group, it's a really dynamic group, and I would say we're stewards. That's how we see ourselves. We're stewards of high quality coach education around the world, and have a really dynamic group of peers who are interested in collaborating and discussing what it is to be coach trainers and best practices in that. So we're happy to have these calls once a month and offer them to our members and non-members. We will be issuing CCU certificates for these calls. Within a month or so, we should have approval from ICF. I also just wanted to let you know we're welcoming our members to these calls. We welcome non-members. And if you are a non-member of ACTO at this time and you would like to be an ACTO member, this is a great time to become one. We have an incentive going on right now for people to become members of ACTO and join our community. Right now, if you join the months of November and December, we're offering them for free. So then you'll be members for next year. So if you would like to be a member of ACTO and join our community, go to actoonline.org, the same site that you signed up for this call, and there will be information there for you to join our group. And also wanted to put in a quick word about our conference, annual conference, which is always my favorite conference of the year. Wonderful energy, wonderful group of people. This year we're going to be in Phoenix from June 15th to the 17th. And we're also featuring the much anticipated PCC marker training. The ICF has agreed to come and do a live day of training to offer PCC marker training to people that are attending the conference, and that'll be the day before the conference. So that's all of my announcements, and without further ado, I would like to introduce Anita, who will introduce our speaker for today. Welcome.
Great, thank you, Hallie. First of all, welcome to everyone, and welcome to Peter, of course. And today we are very lucky because we have Peter with us to tell a lot about positive, accelerating learning and result. And the word after this sentence, guaranteed, is very interesting, of course, because how can you guarantee that? I'm very curious. It sounds, Peter, as a very, very big promise. But maybe I can assure the listeners, because my first experience with Peter dates back from, I think, the annual conference of 2013. And we did an exercise together in which I told a story about a part of my life. And it was fantastic to experience his positive approach. With that positive feedback, he created, as it were, a new perspective from which I could consider these events in my life as surprisingly new. And that was great. What Peter is doing, what is he doing? His clients, he creates space for his clients to reconnect with their personal being, with their personal nature. And I'm very curious for this evening what you are going to tell us, Peter. Peter, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Anita. You are awesome. Well, it's a real pleasure to be here, and thank you so much for the invitation, and thank you to Hallie and Anita for orchestrating this amazing technology and space for us to share best practices, because that's what I believe ACTO is all about. And so the best practice that I'd like to share with you today is one that I've been using for the last almost 20 years, and it's creating a learning environment where there is 100% positive feedback. We use no form of critique. We use no form of telling people what they didn't do. And so I know that that's kind of a revolutionary thought. And so what I'd like to get into is sharing some of my experience with this and why I think it works. And then answer questions or your inquiries or your skepticism or whatever it might be that's present in your mind. And see if there's some way that you might be able to utilize or, you know, be able to do this for yourself and for your students. So what I created here is the inspired learning model. And the inspired learning model is made up of basically 7 elements. And we're not going to have time in an hour to go through every single one of these, but I'll hit some real highlights and get down to the crux of how this works and why it works. Because the truth is that when this came to me and came to my partner at Coach for Life, the other co-founder of Coach for Life, frankly, we didn't know if this was going to work because it was something that we had not been exposed to ourselves in any of our education, either as a student or as, say, an educator. But now after using it for 19 years, I know that it works, and I can tell you how and why it works. So the core elements of this is number one, facilitator is a subject matter expert in their field. They understand the competencies, then they can recognize the competencies when a student or a learner is performing them. Number two, the subject matter itself must be broken down to the core competencies. And so we're very fortunate in ICF and coach training schools. Those are defined for us. There's 11 core competencies, as we well know, and there's 69 sub-competencies, you know, 2 A, B, C, and 4 A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and so on. There's 69 of those things that we train our learners to learn and be able to perform in a proficient manner. And so that's a key element to this. I'll circle back to that one. The physical environment is one that's comfortable and that the learner can be open. Our experience is that the learner only learns when they're open. If they have a closed mind or a closed physicality or a closed mindset, then nothing gets in. And so it's important that the physical environment be one that they are quite literally comfortable in. The fourth element, the inspired learner, the responsibility to learn something is, I won't say solely on the learner, but basically it is solely on the learner. 99% of what a learner learns is based on what they want to learn, what they're open to learn, what makes sense to them, what's congruent for them, what they can utilize or integrate into their life. And so we make it very clear to the learner that I can hold a space, I'm a subject matter expert, but ultimately, bottom line, you are going to be the one that needs to do the work and open up to learn that which it is that you're curious to learn. Number 5, standards of presence is a guideline of how are we going to be together in a learning environment. And so it is actually very structured. Some of you might call these classroom rules or guidelines. A lot of people use these as a way to communicate more effectively. They've been used in a wide range of situations. And I will go through those specifically in this call today. Number 6 is the integration. Okay, so knowing something or hearing about something is different than actually being able to utilize it. So the integration is through our exercises, listening to them coach, listening to them through a dyad exercise. Are they really listening? Are they asking powerful questions? Are they using direct communication? Are they following through, etc.? The integration is a key part of learning. And the last one is intentionally not the inspiration, but inspiration. And italicized because it's the magic. It's the unknown. It's allowing the brilliance and the magistry and the magicness of people that are learning and going through a learning process to be surprised. And that also meant all of us. So does this work? Let me get down to a couple of things. This is not my study. This is a study that was documented in How Full Is Your Bucket? It's a book that came out several years ago by Tom Rath. And he quotes a study that was done by Elizabeth Hurlock in 1925. She was a psychologist. And her postulate was, if I take a classroom of students and I praise one group, I criticize or critique a second group, and a third group I just plain ignore, what will be the results of their learning? And what I found very, very interesting in this study is that the students as a whole started off, and this is a mathematics arithmetic, I think it was like 5th or 6th grade level. So that would be, 10, 11, 12 kind of ages. And they were solving problems, 10 out of 25 problems, okay? What she did then over the course of 5 days is take a look at how each of those different groups of individuals that only got a certain type of feedback in their learning, and what did they actually do? And so you can see there on the left, or excuse me, on the right, both the praised and those that were being criticized, they actually went up on the second day. But if you look at the third, fourth, and fifth day, those that were criticized decreased. Now, there's still some learning, okay? There was still some learning that took place. There's a 19% learning that took place from day 1 to day 5. But if you look at the gold line, the praise, those are only praised. She found that the children responded more favorably to that. They were more open to learn. And their learning increased by a factor of 71%, which is significant, obviously. The ones that were ignored, they still learned a little bit on their own, 5%, but not very much. And the control group, again, -5. So it's like the clear indication here that somebody in the world knew back in 1925 is that by acknowledging people, by praising what they had learned, accelerates the learning process. And again, if you look at the difference between the traditional critiquing model of learning that I was brought up with in grade school and high school and higher education and corporate training, et cetera, throughout my whole life, the difference we have here is criticized or critiquing model of learning versus a 100% praised or acknowledged learning. There was 274% more learning that took place. Okay, that's one touchstone. This is a study that I did with a group of, these were actual educators that were getting their master's degree from Johns Hopkins Graduate School of Education. And it's just a study that was done by one of those students that was getting her master's degree in education. She had 2 groups of students that she had worked with the year before. This was in high school level now. So these are kids that are 14, 15 years old. She had 2 groups of students. She was teaching them a higher level of mathematics. It was a new curriculum. And during the first 4 weeks, this is one semester. This is over the course of over one semester or 9 weeks, okay? Both of her groups, the number of students that were passing on week 1, if you look at that, 6 in one group and 8 in the other group. And then it diminished to 5 and 4, and then 4 and 3, and so on down to the week 4, which sort of bottomed out. And that's the week she introduced the inspired learning model. And so she only acknowledged the students in one group positively with no critique. And she acknowledged two things. One was correct work as it related to the competencies of solving mathematical problems, which was her subject matter. And number two, she also acknowledged good behavior, okay? Good classroom behavior. In week 5, as she reported out, the students kind of had that new sense of freedom, so they're sort of going wild. And she had a teaching assistant, and the teaching assistant said, Mayday, Mayday, this is not working. We got to go back to critiquing and telling them what they're doing wrong and to sit down and keep quiet. She said, no, I'm going to stick with it. I don't know if this is going to work, but Reading seems to think that it's going to work. So she stuck with it as a good little researcher, and you'll see the yellow line or gold line in the graph continuingly to increase in weeks 6, 7, 8, and 9. We're finally 9 out of the 10 students were doing excellent work and in their mathematics. The second group, the blue line group, they started off in week 4 of having 40%, or 4 out of 10 were passing the subject matter. And they ended up in week 9 of 6 out of 10. So she had a 50% increase, from 4 to 6, which is really good. I mean, in traditional learning, that would be considered quite good teaching and quite good in terms of results, a 50% increase over the course of the semester, starting with week 4. But if you look at from where she started with 8 people doing good work and passing. She ended up with 6, so it actually decreased. The significance of this, let me see if I have this other graph. Yeah, there we go. There was a 50% from week 4 to week 9. There's a 50% increase for the traditional group. She continued teaching like she'd been taught how to teach, critiquing, acknowledging, supporting, championing, all the kinds of things that a good educator does. And she had a 50% increase starting with week 4. If you look at the gold group again, 350% increase from, week 4 to week 9. This is probably the best side-by-side research that we've had done on the use of the inspired learning model vis-a-vis traditional critique-based training. Okay, so here's what I'm going to, this is a little exercise. You can try this on your own. We probably don't have time to do it right now, but I wanted to figure out a way that I could have educators or trainers or teachers or even parents kind of test this theory out for themselves. And so let me explain what I do here in this little chart. I put this on a little, like a little card, like maybe twice the size of the little Post-it here. Put on a little card, and I'll put people into pairs, and I'll say, share something about what you're learning. It could be something that you are expert in, that you've had a passion for all your life, or it could be something that you're just newly learning. Maybe it's how to create a website is brand new for you, or how to use your smartphone is brand new for you, or it could be an old subject matter for all of us. It might be, the world of training and educating people on how to coach. And then I want you to share about your passion for learning more about that particular topic, your own learning, with your partner. And do that for 2 minutes or 2.5 minutes. Okay, I've used it both ways. The partner that's listening cannot share. They're listening like a coach. They're not giving advice. They're not telling them about additional resources and not telling them about their good buddy that also has that passion for needlepoint or macrame or whatever it is that you're interested in. They're just listening actively like a good coach. At the end of 2 or 2.5 minutes of sharing, I then ask the listener to acknowledge 100% positive back to the person that shared about their learning experience. About the passions that they have about it. They can share back about the things that they've already learned. They can share about their curiosities in terms of how they're applying this learning, but they're not allowed to critique them in any way, shape, or form. At the end of that 4 or 4.5 minutes little exercise, I then hand this card to the person that shared their story about their learning and received the feedback. And I have out the right column first. So after sharing and receiving 100% positive feedback on a scale of, I actually use 1 to 10. This shows 0 to 10, but I actually use 1 to 10. What's your level of excitement about the subject matter? What's your self-appreciation about your learning process? Are you stimulated with new ideas having done this 4.5 minute exercise? Are you inspired to pursue more? Do you have clarity of next steps? Okay. If you categorize these under a headline, it would be, how open am I to learn and be in a learning mindset? After they've done this one on the right, then they go prior to sharing and receiving 100% feedback. What was your level of excitement about the subject matter? What was your self-appreciation about your learning process? Were you stimulated with new ideas prior to this 4.5 minute exercise, inspired to pursue more, and so on? Okay, same questions, still a scale of 1 to 10. Now, I've done this probably over the last, I'd say 8 or 10 years. And it has been remarkable in terms of the results. This is with educational leaders in India, September 11th, 2010. I'm thinking that this group of educators, I think there's like 35 people in this seminar that I did on inspired learning. Level of excitement went up from a little over 6 to 8.5. And you can see the scale there. The dark blue is the pre-exercise. In other words, 4.5 minutes ago, where were you? Post-sharing and acknowledgement, 100% acknowledgement, where were you? And I took the whole thing, boiled it down, and divided it out. And as a group, they grew almost 40%. There's a 40% increase in their level of excitement to learn more, or their readiness to learn more. And that happened in a matter of 4.5 minutes. This is another one from the same group. This is where they were a beginner learner, sharing about something that they're just beginning to learn about. They weren't real sure about it. They didn't consider themselves an expert. 35.9%, 36% increase in a matter of 4 minutes. 2 minutes of sharing, 2 minutes of acknowledging. So there's other graphs and charts and information and anecdotal things. The point is that when somebody is acknowledged for what they've already learned or what they're learning, they are more excited to learn more. The act of critique, even if you say constructive criticism or developmental criticism, it shuts the brain down. It has people kind of shrink and say, okay, well, I'm not sure that I want to protect myself from any form of critique, so maybe I don't go to the edges of my learning and experiment because I know that I'm going to be critiqued for what I got wrong, and I don't want to be critiqued for what I got wrong. I'm going to run through the elements very quickly, so there's a lot of time for Q&A. Facilitator is an expert and initiator of the holder of the safe space. Element number 1. Element number 2, the subject matter. It's articulated both orally and in writing, and there's a clearly defined competency list of what the students are wanting to learn to get to that level of mastery for that subject matter. Physical environment, we've talked about, comfortable, safe, protected. Protected, what I mean by that is that There's nobody else that's allowed in that learning space except for the learners and the facilitator of learning that has already agreed on how they're going to be together. No one else is allowed in this space unless they've gone through the same process of, yes, I agree to only acknowledge positively. I only agree to listen for what you've done well. I acknowledge all of those things so that everybody is in the same space. They don't fear that someone's going to come in and break that safety of safe space. The inspired learner is an eager learner and curious, takes responsibility for their own learning. That's the key for me right there. They have to take responsibility for their own learning. If they don't, then none of this works. If they're being forced to learn something, this system has been used in systems effectively, where they have to show up for school, they do not have a choice, and this teacher still supports them to be take their own responsibility for learning. The standards of presence, I'm going to go through those in more detail right here. Basically 10 things in the standard. This is the classroom rules that we've talked about. Maintain confidentiality, adopt a stand for innocence, practice a positive focus. And a positive focus, what I ask them to do is, I want you to focus on the 98% that is already working, the 98% of your life that's already working. We'll get to the 2% that doesn't work, the issues, the problems, the challenges, the blocks, the fears, all the rest of that goes into it. But I want you to consciously look at what you already know, what you're already practicing, what you're already good at, and focus strictly on that. Connect at a heart level, share your magnificence, listen deeply and with honor to yourself as well as the other people in the learning space. Give only authentic and positive acknowledgement. Authentic, they have to have seen it or heard it or experienced it genuinely. They're not making stuff up. And then acknowledge that positively. Number 8 is the reciprocal of that. Fully receive acknowledgement and support. And so I encourage the learner to say, thank you for seeing that in me. Thank you for hearing that in me. And not pushing it back and saying, yeah, but I still got too many things that I did wrong, or, that's my job, or it's no big deal, or, I got so much more to learn. No, none of that. Just thank you. Number 9, practice self-care and self-responsibility. Allow others to do the same in this space and be fully present, okay? So we do a 5-day training in our initial training in person. We will spend an hour and a half on this sheet right here alone. First day. We spend about 45 minutes on this at the beginning of day 2, day 3, day 4, and day 5. We'll look at it through different lenses. The first one is that myself and my co-facilitator will talk about each of these, what they mean, ask them for their agreement to do this for the day to the best of their ability. The second, third, fourth days, we ask them to share at random which one they want to talk about and what it means to them as it relates to the learning environment. Day 1, as it relates to coaching or the coaching relation to. Day 3 or day 4, it's going through them again, and they talk about them as it relates to their own self-care, management, self-mastery, okay, as from a personal level. Element number 6 in the model is talking about the integration. The key to learning is repetition. Nobody masters anything the very first time they try it. Nobody, not even the child prodigies, not even the superstars in sports, not even, you may have a innate talent or gift or genius, yes, but it's also there to be developed. And so it's through repetition. Integration in this model is supporting them to go through it multiple times to learn more and more and more and become more masterful at it. And finally, inspiration, knowing that there is an unknown. And I know that each of you, and my sharing with each of you, those that I've known over the years in ACTO, is there's surprises. There's delightful surprises in our training. People say things and shed a new light on things that I've been talking about for 20 years. It's like, oh my God, that's brilliant. That's a great metaphor. That's exactly what we're talking about here. So there's the magic, the unexpected, the divine, the natural genius that bubbles up from the student. And to allow a space for that, as opposed to being so scripted that, you know, there's no room for that. Okay, so that's all of that. I want to open it up to questions, and I can get into many more specifics in terms of how I utilize this in our coaches training, because I use this in the basic training, the 5 days that I just talked about. We have an 8-week webinar course that's after that in terms of further integration of those things. And then a 6-month certification process where I certify coaches to, you know, listen to their recordings and use this model 100% in all of it. So I am going to, well, let me leave the slides up for right now. If there's any specifics on the slides, I'm happy to go back and answer any of those particular questions. Hey, if there's any of those coming through. Or I can take this down so we can see each other and have a Q&A on how this all works.
Yeah, if anybody has any questions about the slides first, then after that we can get Peter to stop sharing his screen.
Yeah.
Any questions that you think require the slides?
Hello?
Hi.
Yes, this is, hello, Peter. It's Dave Gewerk, and I always love listening to you wherever you are.
Hey, David, how you doing?
Good. Great to hear you, and I love what you have to say, and our approach is very similar, but I always learn things from you. If we couldn't get the slides because we couldn't get on Zoom, how do we get access to them?
We're going to...
I'll send that to Hallie, and she can distribute them through, how are you going to distribute them, Hallie?
We're going to post both the recording of this call along with the slides on our website, actoonline.org.
Great, great. And do I have permission to ask a question unrelated to the slides, or do I need to wait?
Well, you can probably stop sharing, Peter, and then we can get everybody to pick.
Okay. He gets me so excited I want to ask questions right away, but I'll hold off.
No, go ahead.
All right, Dave.
Okay, so Peter, whenever I listen to you and whenever I listen to your inspired learning model, there's this connection to the heart that is opened up with positivity and acknowledgement. And I'm just curious,
Agreed.
When you get a lot of students that are coming in, there's this default mechanism that always goes to problems and solutions. How do you, what do you notice in those first 5 days when you're, getting them, you're providing positive acknowledgement and you're working with them to open up the heart piece at the expense of that default of problems and solutions? What do you notice in the beginning, and what do you tend to do when that happens?
Love to answer that. Okay, let me just make sure there's nothing else on the slide question side of it, David, but I'll definitely come back to that and talk about that because, yeah, lots of experience with that.
I had a question about one of your slides. It was one of the ones that you talked about early on, the activity that you do.
Go ahead.
And I wasn't quite clear on the first one. They're sharing and talking about their learning in that particular, how excited they are or whatever related to that particular learning topic, right?
Correct.
And then the second one, they're sharing about something that they're passionate about learning. Is that correct?
No, what I ask them not to talk about any of those things during the time that they're sharing for the first 2 minutes or 2.5 minutes, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
The person that is listening for passion, strengths, what they're excited about, what they already learned, what they're doing with this particular topic or learning, okay?
Mm-hmm. But it's the topic that's being taught that day or whatever.
Well, it could be any topic. It could be, for us, it could be, you know, why do you want to become a professional coach?
Okay.
If it's a general audience, I'll have them say, you know, what are you curious about? What are you learning more about in your life right now? And it might be around your own health and your body. It might be around aging parents. It might be around, you know, how do I bring my kids up with a sense of responsibility? It could be absolutely any topic that would be germane to that group.
Okay. And then how is the second sharing different?
The second sharing is that the person that was sharing now stops sharing, and the person that has been listening to them acknowledges that person for 90 seconds.
Okay.
And what I ask the person that's been sharing is, your sharing is complete. I want you to sit back, relax, and I want you to receive all the positive acknowledgments that are going to be showered upon you by your partner in the next minute and a half. And your job is to open up to receive those and say thank you.
Okay.
It's the only thing you can say.
So what I hear, Peter, is that the only person that's filling out this form is the person that shares and receives the feedback.
That's correct.
So they're the one who are taking this poll.
That's right. Now, after we've gone through that process, then I say stay with your partner and just reverse it. Now the person that was listening initially is the one that's sharing about something that they're passionate about, something that they're learning more about, something that they're curious about. And then the other person acknowledges them for a minute and a half. And then that person would fill out the same sheet that I've got on the screen right now. So the whole exercise takes 10 minutes, but it's like basically 4.5 minutes each way.
Okay. I'm not clear on what the second one, when that is filled out.
The second one is filled out by the second partner that shares their learning with the person that originally shared.
I think, Sharon, if I can, I think I'm reading her brain here, Peter. What Peter shared was that he gets the person to, they don't see this form until after they've shared and received feedback. Then they fill out the second half to rate how they were feeling after they received the praise. And then they have to go backwards in their head and remember how they were feeling before they received the praise, and they fill out the first part of the form.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's clear now. Thank you.
Thank you, Hallie.
Yeah.
I've hired Hallie as my official translator. Any other questions on slides? All right, I'm gonna stop sharing this then, Hallie.
Peter, can I ask a question, please?
Sure, go ahead.
I'm asking about what you just said. Isn't there any influence of when I'm inspired looking backwards? I will rank it as less than what I feel now. So isn't it influencing the rank that I see before? Because usually you rank yourself before and after, but here it's both after.
I think there is a bias there, yes, and I would say yes to that as like quote professional research. But I also, here's the other thing that I know about that is that if I ask them about something that they don't have experience with, then they're going to not be able to be accurately sharing where they are now. But if they have the experience of what I want them to have and then go back and compare that, there's an immediate, wow, I'm feeling better. I'm feeling more alive. I'm feeling more vibrant. I'm feeling more excited about doing that additional learning. So that would be my answer to that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I can also share with you, Aaron, is that I've never had a group that was less than 20% increase overall within that's 4.5 minutes. You know, I probably have documented at this stage, you know, 200, 300, 400 people with that little card, and it ranges anywhere from 20% to 50% increase in that 4.5 minutes.
Thank you.
I have a question. I do a lot of coaching of students who are at risk. They've failed the same class 2, 3 times, generally twice or 3 times. And a significant number of them have test anxiety. And so I do some coaching, individual coaching around test anxiety. And I'm thinking about, and I do a lot of acknowledging and reassuring, but I'm thinking about how I could use this model that you're talking about even more. My thought is that I just do a lot of acknowledging of them and praise of what they're saying and how well the things that they attempt to do, that they're, you know, praise them for that. Am I on track, or what would you suggest?
Yeah, well, I think you're exactly on track, Sharon, exactly. And the only thing that I would add to that, excuse me, is create a matrix. And you can create a matrix using you're talking about specifically coach training now, Sharon?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Create a matrix of all of its competencies.
Mm-hmm.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and then down, you know, 1, 1, 2, 3, or how many or is under 1. And when you acknowledge them, the other part of this process is having them self-acknowledge.
Interesting. Okay.
And not just self-acknowledge, oh, I did a good job, or I'm trying hard, or I think I did okay. No, root it back to the actual competencies. So what I do is send out in our certification, you're going to be presenting 7 coaching sessions over the course of 6 months. You're going to self-acknowledge yourself for each of those before we listen to it. Mm-hmm. And you must positively acknowledge yourself for the things that you hear yourself actually doing that's corresponding or aligned with competency 3B. The second thing that I've started doing more recently is that matrix is when they're acknowledged by you or a class member in the cohort. Mm-hmm. Wow, you did a great job of defining the logistics of coaching, you know, which is 2A or B. I forget exactly right now, but 2B, I'll say. Mm-hmm. You said we're going to meet every Tuesday from 10 to 11. Well, that's exactly what that competency is about. And then they go back to their own matrix and they check it off. Got it. I actually heard myself do that. My peers or my mentor coach, in your case, has acknowledged me for that. And so they can actually see their progress as they're continuing to master all of those different competencies.
So I'm asking the student how they're to kind of grade themselves or rate themselves on what they're mastering each of those competencies. Yes, and again, authentically. They can't make it up. They think and say, yeah, I kind of know what to do. I just didn't do it in this situation. Then that doesn't count. Mm-hmm. Because, again, it's iterative. It's repetitive. So 6 months and doing it 7 times the way that I'm doing it. Mm-hmm. In a certification class, they get the chance to check off, 6 or 8 or 10 times where they've done that particular subcompetency, and they go, yeah, I got it. I'm doing it. I it sounds differently maybe than my classmate, how they do it, but I get that I'm doing it. Okay, so now when I'm doing this. Their self-confidence. Okay. Oh, what I was going to say is I'm doing this on an individual basis, so it's not in a classroom. It's one-on-one with a student. Yeah, it could still work. When they self-acknowledge themselves or you acknowledge them, they would check it off. Or you might even say, over the course of a couple of months that you might be working with them, you may come back to that same point 2 or 3 times. Check, check, check. Mm-hmm. Okay. And it's physical. They can see it. That's what builds their self-confidence, as opposed to
I'm going to come back to David's question in a second here, is we have been trained to critique ourselves. It's David used the word, it's our default. I don't believe critiquing is a default. I think it's conditioned, and I think it's learned. But if we've been learning in a learning environment for the last 45 years that way, then our default in our head is I have to critique myself. So it buries all the stuff I've done well.
Mm-hmm. So you're asking them to keep acknowledging what they've learned rather than critiquing themselves.
Yeah.
That sounds helpful.
Yeah. Thank you for the question.
Peter, looks like I didn't even know we had this function. They got a hand raised from 416 area code.
Cool.
And you'd have to unmute yourself by pressing *6 if you're on the phone. Okay, here they come, I think. Nope, still muted. So just carry on, Peter. And I just want to put in a little technical note for people. If you want to see, you can change the view that you have of the people on the call. There's a button at the top that says toggles between speaker view and gallery view. So you can play with that. You can actually see up to 25 people at a time if you want to see who's on the call.
It's awesome. It's an awesome, beautiful site, too, I might add.
Is it? Isn't it? I love it. So the person that's got their hand raised, you can also put your question.
You're good-looking people.
Yeah. If you're having trouble getting off mute, you can put it in the chat window and I'll read it for you. So feel free to take yourselves off mute and
thanks, Sam.
Speak away.
Okay, so while that's happening, I want to finish David's answer to his question, is that the person that comes in, and all of the people that come into my training, by the way, are probably average age of 45, plus or minus, 20 years. They're big range. But they've all been trained in a traditional manner of critiquing.
Yeah.
And so when I suggest that they focus on the 98% that works, I'll give you a little quick exercise that we do with them. Hold your hand like this, as far out in front of you as possible. And then put your fingers around it. So your eye is looking at this little dark hole. Okay, and put that out as far in front of you as you can. Now imagine that that's the part of life that's not working. But what else are you seeing around it? You're seeing, in my case, I'm seeing a pool, I'm seeing palm trees, I'm seeing Kuan Yin out there by my pool, I'm looking at the little lake and so on. My pictures in my office. And I say, now, if you've been trained to focus on what's not working, what's going to hit you upside the head or bite you in the ass, by your educators, by your parents, bring it in, close the other eye so you can really get a good look at that, what's not working, not working, not working. What's happened is that 2% of life becomes 100%.
Mm-hmm.
And it starts registering, wow, that's really true. What I focus on expands. Every philosophy in the world has that, by the way, right? What I practice, I get better at. What I focus on expands. And so I'm going to encourage you to focus on what's working during the next, today, just today only. I'm not going to ask you to sign up for this for life or even the rest of the 5 days, just today. But they start getting an experience of it. When they start sharing about something, from that last dyad exercise, well, I forgot to do the connection at the beginning. I forgot to, clear them so that they're, not multitasking. I forgot, okay, so what did you do well? What did you do correctly? And I make their brain stop going through the trap of I didn't do this, I didn't do this, I didn't do this, to what I did do. Ah, great. And then I acknowledge them for that. That is perfect. That is what we call in coaching the client. Oh, and then they perk up like a sunflower and they go, oh, I'm getting it. Okay, cool. Do they know that they need to learn more? Absolutely. The difference is that they bring more resourcefulness and energy and vitality to that learning process. That's what I'm after. Does that help, David?
Yeah, it does. And Peter, all the research that's out there just validates what you're saying, because when the brain automatically goes towards the negative, what opens up the brain and broadens and builds the brain is inspired positive learning. And focus on acknowledgement with evidence opens up the brain. All that other stuff closes it. So what you're doing is you're not only expanding the brain, you're opening it up to possibilities.
Absolutely true. That's my experience with it.
Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you. I love that exercise too.
Yeah. The other piece of it that I found too is that if I'm in a critique learning environment, then I tend not to volunteer ideas or myself a whole lot, especially adults, because adults are masterful in many, many things and they don't like to look stupid.
Yeah.
And so they tend to hold back, which retards their learning, as opposed to a little kid that's, wow, look at the wrapper. This is cool. And oh, listen to it. They're so open. They're a big sponge. And so by opening it up to only a positive acknowledgement, then a learner can, what I call, is of their learning. They can look over the precipice of, geez, I wonder if I experiment with this edge over here and maybe be a little more risky, a little more experimental. I wonder what that would do.
Mm. You know, Peter, we don't even call it feedback anymore in our program. We call it feed forward.
Love it. Love it. I'm going to use that. I'm going to plagiarize you liberally on that one.
Absolutely. Go for it, buddy.
So we had a raised hand with Larry Williamson. Did you have a question, sir? You have to unmute. You need to unmute yourself, Larry, by clicking on your mic in the bottom left corner. There you go.
Okay, there. That working?
Hey, Larry.
Hey, Peter, how are you doing, my friend?
Fabulous.
I don't have a question, but an acknowledgement. I don't want to pass up this opportunity. I had the pleasure, for others who don't know me, of starting my coaching career with Peter and all his programs. I want to say that not only are these concepts applicable to coaching and learning, but also in building relationships as a whole, be it marital or otherwise. So all the things that I've learned and continue to expand on have been quite a blessing. And Peter, I thank you for that and what you have shared and contributed and brought to this world. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. And Larry is truly an expert when it comes to relationship and relationship building. So that's huge coming from you, Larry. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll leave you a little exercise. I know we're getting at the end of the class here, Hallie, but try this with your teenage daughter or granddaughter, or try it with your spouse. It changes everything. I really want to acknowledge you for paying attention for me for the last 3 milliseconds and not answering your phone. That was awesome. Thank you, dude.
We have time for one more question if somebody's got something for them. Ask. There will be no critique.
Yay! Thanks, Hallie.
Did somebody? So I heard somebody else.
Yeah, this is Sharon. I was going to ask another question based on what Peter just said. It just made me think about my grandkids and in trying to encourage positive behavior rather than negative. So it's kind of the old, thing that we always hear of acknowledging all their positive behavior more than critiquing their negative.
Amen, sister.
I hope it works.
Hallie, can I give a minute and a half little story?
Of course, go ahead.
Mother comes to our training. Teenage daughter, 13 years old, hasn't been taking the garbage out forever. She keeps on asking her Thursday morning, please take the damn garbage out. One less thing for me to do, blah, blah, blah. She goes home and Daughter doesn't take the garbage out, and she doesn't critique her. She takes the garbage out herself.
Oh, interesting.
Next day or next week, same thing. But the following week, the daughter brings the empty garbage can back in behind the gate. Mother acknowledges her for bringing in the garbage can. Thank you so much for bringing in the garbage can. I so appreciate it. It's just one less thing that I need to worry about. She's never had to take the garbage can out again.
Interesting.
True story.
Hi, Terry.
First, I want to thank Peter so much for his contribution to bringing real presence of people out. My little story is I raised my son that way, and to a fault, where I had to deal with him coming to me and saying, Mom, the world is different out there than the world you brought me up in. And he, no, seriously, he had to adjust to all the criticism that they were getting in school. And da, 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 da. So just take that into advisement too with your kids.
Thanks, Terry. I love you. God bless you.
All right. Well, I think we're going to wind this down. Thank you so much to everybody for being here and playing and participating today. Peter, of course, thank you so much. And I have a little birdie told me that Peter will also be at our conference this year to present on this topic in June. So, yes. So I just want to let you guys know that we do not have a forum call in December. We're taking the month of December off for holidays for everybody. And we will be returning with a forum call the third Wednesday of January. And the topic will be group and team coaching and how to train that. So that's Jennifer Britton, another Canadian. So we would love to have you back for that. And everybody have a wonderful rest of your evening, afternoon, or day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.